الحمد لله نحمده سبحانه ونستعين به ونسترشده ونعوذ به من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه الطيبين الطاهرين وعلى من تبعهم وعمل بعملهم واستنى بسنتهم إلى يوم الدين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. أما بعد. All praise be to Allah, all gratitude be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I ask Allah to bless our Prophet and Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We seek refuge in Allah from the evils of our own selves and from the wrongs of our deeds. Whoever is guided by Allah will never go astray, and whoever goes astray can only be guided by Allah. I bear witness that there is no God worthy of worship except Allah, alone without partners. And I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is Allah's messenger, prophet and servant. I remind myself and I remind you to follow the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and to apply them to your daily lives. My dear brothers and sisters, today inshallah I want to start out with a story from the time of Al-Hasan al-Basri. Al-Hasan al-Basri, for those of you who don't know, was a scholar of his time. He was from the Tabi'een, and he was a man of learning. And one time a man came to ask him a question. He wanted advice. And this man was a farmer, so he had a land and he would plant the land, but there was no rain. So when there's no rain, nothing will grow. So he needs rain. So he came to Hasan al-Basri and he was complaining that he didn't have enough rain to grow the crops so he can sell them. That was his business. And there wasn't enough rain. So Hasan al-Basri looked at him and said, say astaghfirullah. Ask Allah for forgiveness. Astaghfirullah. That's it. That's the only advice he gave him. And the man left. A short while after that, on the same day, another man came to Al-Hasan al-Basri and he said, I'm very poor. I don't have enough money and I need more risk. I need more money. So Al-Hasan al-Basri looked at him and told him, say astaghfirullah. Again, same thing, same advice he gave the first person who was asking for rain. He said, say astaghfirullah, just ask Allah for forgiveness. And then a third man came, and this man had a different request. He and his wife were having trouble having children. They didn't have any children. So he asked Hasan al-Basri, I want a child. I want to have a child. What should I do? So Hasan al-Basri again told him the same thing. He said, go and say astaghfirullah. Ask Allah for forgiveness. And so the man took that advice and left. But the people who were around Al-Hasan al-Basri were a little bit surprised. I mean, everything he says astaghfirullah. Any question they asked him, it was the day he was focused on astaghfirullah. Everything they asked him, he said, go say astaghfirullah, ask Allah for forgiveness, ask Allah. So they asked him, they said, these three people, they came to you with different problems. They're not all asking for the same thing, and yet you gave them all the same advice. You told them to say astaghfirullah. What is this all about? Can you explain to us? Why didn't you give them specific advice? Why didn't you tell the person who was asking for rain to do a certain something, the other one asking for money, certain other instruction, and the one asking for a child. So Al-Hasan al-Basri looked at them and said, this is not from me. I didn't make this up. This is from the Quran. And he read to them, من بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم فقلت استغفروا ربكم إنه كان غفارا يرسل السماء عليكم مدرارا ويمددكم بأموال وبنين ويجعل لكم جنات ويجعل لكم أنهارا. I said to them, ask forgiveness from your Lord. So the ayat start out with the advice of ask Allah for forgiveness. He is often forgiving. Now what happens when you ask for forgiveness? The next ayah is going to tell us what happens. He will send rain to you in abundance. And He will give you an increase in your wealth. And He will give you children. And bestow upon you gardens. And bestow upon you rivers. Subhanallah, it's all there. Ask Allah for forgiveness. You will get the rain. You will get the money. And you will get the children. There it is in one ayah. Very clear. That's where Al-Hasan al-Basri came with this advice to the people, or who asked him on that day. I want to talk today about this concept of rizq. Because we have a problem in the Muslim world today where Muslims are constantly complaining. They're always unhappy with what they have and they always want more. Do you know anyone who wants less? I don't know anyone who wants less. I've never heard anyone say, I wish I had less than I have now. I have never heard that. Subhanallah, everyone wants more. In fact, there was a survey done of thousands of people asking them, how much money do you need to be happy? So this was a survey done asking people how much, around the world, this was not just in the United States, this was all over the world. How much money do you need to be happy? So different people from different countries gave different figures. And some people said $30,000. Some people said 50. Some said 70. Some people said 100. Some people said 150. So there was a range of amounts. But the average for the entire world was $74,000. That was the average number that people came up with. $74,000. If they had $74,000 every year in income, they would be happy. Then they asked people, how much more would make you happier? So, you see, it never ends, right? You always want, how much more would make you happier? So everyone gave out a figure. And the average of the extra amount was that if they made $110,000, they would be even happier than if they made $74,000. The point is not the dollars. The point is that this is human nature. We always want more. We're always asking for more. Even though we may say we are happy at this value, but then when you ask, would more make you happier? The answer is always yes. Yes, if I had more, I would be even happier. That's human nature. That's the reality. And what that means is that we are never satisfied with what we have. Right? Because if we were satisfied, we would not ask for more. We would not want more. We would not seek more. So I want to talk a little bit about that today. I'm not going to say that asking for wealth is bad, or that we shouldn't seek to have more. No, we as believers should, but the money shouldn't occupy our hearts. It should be in our hands, but it shouldn't occupy our hearts. That's a critical and important distinction. That's a very important distinction that many Muslims lose sight of today. They live their life just so they can collect more. That's not the point. If Allah gives you more, alhamdulillah. I'm going to show you in the end that you're going to get what you're going to get. Whether you like it or not. Whether you are happy with it or not. Remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you if you rely upon Him. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in a beautiful hadith, if you rely upon Allah sincerely, He will provide for you in the same way that He provides for the birds. They fly away hungry and they come back with full stomachs. So a beautiful hadith. It gives us a real life example. He's telling us, don't worry, if the bird, what can the bird do? The bird is very limited. Yet, they keep living. We don't see the birds dying right and left. How do they keep living? Because Allah provides for them. But the important point is that the bird doesn't just sit there and say, provide for me. The bird actually gets up and flies. They actually have to do something. And the same way with us. We have to work for what we want, for what the rizq from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we want. And that work has to be in the context of relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having trust and faith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, من بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن يتوكل على الله فهو حسبه إن الله بالغ أمره قد جعل الله لكل شيء قدرا. And whosoever puts his trust in Allah, then it will suffice him. Meaning you won't need anything else. If you put your trust in Allah, that is sufficient for you. Indeed, Allah will accomplish His purpose. Indeed, Allah has set a measure for all things. He has decided already how much you're going to get. You don't know how much you're going to get through your lifetime, but He does. And I'm going to share more about that with you a little bit later. The Prophet ﷺ was asked a question. He said, what earning is the best? What kind of earning is the best? In other words, what should you do to earn money? How is the best way for you to earn good halal money? What is the best way to do it? And his answer was, عَمَلُ الرَّجُلِ بِيَدِهِ. A man who works with his hands. وَكُلُّ بَيْعٍ مَبْرُورٍ. And every trade that is clean, there's no cheating in it or deception. Someone who buys and sells, that's a trade. Or a man who works with his hands. Now, of course, that's not literal. It doesn't mean only people who work with their hands. But people who actually get up and work, not sit at home and say, I wish Allah will give me. No, that's not sufficient. Okay, you actually have to go out and seek your rizq. Umar ibn Khattab used to say, radiallahu anhu, I would see a young man and I would be impressed by him. But then if I learned that he has no work, I would see him as worthless. That was his opinion. I would see a young man, I see a young man, he looks great, I'm impressed by him. Then I learned that he has no work. I think he's worthless. Completely discounts him, subhanallah. The Prophet ﷺ said in a beautiful hadith, narrated by Anas ibn Malik, radiallahu anhu, he said that the Prophet ﷺ said that whoever wants to have an increase in his wealth and wants to be remembered after his death, then he should connect with his family. Subhanallah. Think about this hadith. If you want an increase in wealth, he didn't say go and invest in this and invest in that, or go become, an engineer or a doctor. He didn't give those kinds of prescriptions. He said if you want an increase in your wealth, connect to your family. That's very important. A lot of people work very hard. They try and they have schemes and they're going to make money, but then in the end they don't make it. If you're having a problem, go back and look. What is your relationship with your mother and your father? What is your relationship with your brothers and your sisters? What is your relationship with your aunts and your uncles? These are critical questions. Because it's not just a matter of being smart. It's not just a matter of knowing how to collect money. But it's also a matter of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so that He will make it easy for you. To make money, as a Muslim, you have to spend money. say, wait, that doesn't make any sense. If I'm spending, how am I making? Mathematically, it doesn't make sense. If I have $1,000, I spend $100, I'm left with $900. So I'm left with less than what I spent. So how could it be that I made money? Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, من بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وما أنفقتم من شيء فهو يخلفه وهو خير الرازقين. And whatever you spend, meaning you spend for the sake of Allah, He will replace it. And He is the best of providers. So not only will He replace it, but He will give you something better. That's what He's trying to tell us. He will give you more. Not necessarily in quantity, but in quality. It will have a certain blessing to it that you didn't have before. So you have to spend in order to receive. One of the things that we often encounter in life is that we get so busy working and trying to improve our financial status and our wealth that we forget about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even our salah becomes routine. We just come in, we do it, we know all the movements, we know all the sayings, we come, we do them real quick, ruku', sujood, we're done, salam alaikum, we're finished. 5 minutes, 3 minutes, it's done. We didn't really think about what we said. We didn't really ponder the great meanings of the ayat we read ourselves when we pray. We don't think about them. We rarely make dua. We often hear other people making dua, but ourselves to make dua, that's rare. Doesn't happen that often. I want to share with you a story from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One day, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam entered the masjid in Medina, and it was not at the time of prayer. So it was not the time for Dhuhr or Asr or Maghrib, it was a time in between. And when he entered the masjid, he saw one of the Sahaba, a man sitting in the corner of the masjid. And so it was unusual. Why is he there and why is he sitting there? It's not time for Salah, nor is it even close. The time for Salah hasn't even approached. And this young man seemed anxious. It seemed like he had a burden on his chest. The Prophet ﷺ was very good at identifying that distress in the Sahaba. So he approached him and he said, what brings you to the masjid at this hour? This is not a time for prayer. Why are you here? Why did you come to the masjid? And the man looked at the Prophet ﷺ and he said, I have a lot of worries. I have a lot of worries. And I have a big burden of debt. He owes people money and he doesn't have the money to pay it back. That's a burden. When you owe someone money and you cannot pay that money back, that's a tremendous burden. It's always causes anxiety day and night, and you're trying to think, how am I going to pay back this loan? And that's what this man had. He was very anxious because he didn't have the money that he needs to pay back his wealth. The Prophet ﷺ told him, I'm going to teach you a few words. I'm going to teach you a few words. He didn't tell him, go and work in this or invest in that. No, he said, I'm going to teach you a few words. If you say them, Allah will relieve you of your anxiety. And He will find a way to help you pay back your debt. This is important. When the Prophet ﷺ tells us that He's going to teach us something that's going to relieve our anxiety and help us pay back our debt, we should listen very carefully. Now these words that He taught him were a dua. They were a supplication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very specific words. I'm going to read them in Arabic and then I'm going to translate them into English. Of course, the man was very excited to hear this and he said, yes, teach me. And he said, قُلْ إِذَا أَصْبَحْتَ وَأَمْسَيْتَ اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الهم والحزن وأعوذ بك من العجز والكسل وأعوذ بك من الجبن والبخل وأعوذ بك من غلبة الدين وقهر الرجال. He said, say every morning and every evening. So he's teaching him when to say these words. Every morning and every evening. O Allah, I seek refuge in you from distress and from sadness. And I seek refuge in you from being unable or being lazy. And I seek refuge in you from being a coward or being greedy. And I seek refuge in you from the burden of my debt and the transgression of man. It's a dua in which you are totally and completely dedicating yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are seeking refuge in Allah. You are asking for Allah's help. And when you ask for Allah's help, you're asking for nobody else's help. That's a critical issue. When you turn to Allah, what you are really saying is that this is exclusive. I'm only asking Allah. I'm only relying upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I don't need anyone else. Nor will I go crying to anyone else. Nor will I go seeking the help of anyone else. Allah is sufficient for me. That's the whole point of this dua. I seek refuge in you, O Allah, from this and this and this and this. He taught him those words. He said, if you say those words, but now saying is one thing, but meaning them is a different thing. We can say a lot of things. You can memorize this and say it 100 times. But if you say it with your tongue only, it's meaningless. It has to come from your heart. It has to be real. It has to be genuine. And it has to be sincere. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran that if we want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to relieve us of difficult situations, that if we want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide for us, the only way to achieve that is to have true taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To be aware of Allah, to be conscious of Allah, to connect with Allah to the exclusion of everyone else. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَل لَّهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. And whoever fears Allah and keeps his duty with him, He will make a way for him to get out, meaning to get out of difficulties. And He will provide him from sources he never could imagine. Subhanallah. Allah will provide for you from sources you never thought possible. And how many of you here today have experienced that? If we in the Friday prayer you cannot talk, only the Imam talks. But if we were to ask each and every one of you, I'm sure sometime in your lifetime, Allah gave you something that you didn't anticipate. Allah provided you with something you had no prior knowledge of. Allah gave you something that you were not expecting. You may not have noticed, but if you go back in your life, you will see that it happened. Allah does it all the time. This is not a rare thing. This is a common occurrence in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you, because He just loves you, He just wants you to appreciate it. He will give you something that you never even thought you were going to get. You might get a raise, you might get a bonus, you might, whatever it may be. Allah will give you something, or He will relieve you of an expense that you thought you were going to incur. Allah will give you something that you never thought possible. It will happen. And it has happened to many, many, many people throughout life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran a very important concept, a concept that we also as believers have lost sight of. And that is the concept of being grateful and thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you want more rizq, you have to be thanking the one who's providing you with that rizq. If your boss at work gives you a bonus, what do you say? You say thank you. Right? You don't just take it and walk away and be rude. You don't do that. You say thank you. That's how we are as human beings when we interact with each other. Imagine when it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is giving you. Now how do you thank Allah? That's the big question. Do you just say thank you? Is that sufficient? No, it's not. It's not sufficient. Words are empty. Words don't mean anything. You know, a lot of people, they thank their boss who are giving them a bonus, but in the back of their mind they're thinking, well, I deserve this. They should have given it to me a long time ago. So they're not really being thankful. They're just saying because that's the social etiquette, that you're supposed to say thank you. But in their hearts of hearts, they're not really thankful. But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it has to come from our heart. It has to be real. And our actions have to validate our appreciation of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does for us. What are those actions? For one, let's follow His instructions and avoid the prohibitions that He has told us not to engage in. Be careful of what you do and what you don't do. Paying sadaqah out of what He provides for you is a way to be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there has to be action. It can't just be empty words. It has to be followed up with real action that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will see. Obtain your money by halal means. Don't be devious. Don't try to concoct schemes and to increase your wealth when you know that it's not 100% clean. Even the non-believers of Mecca, when there was a storm and the Kaaba was destroyed and they had to rebuild it, they insisted that the money that is used to build the Kaaba cannot come from stolen money or money of riba or other what they considered at that time to be devious or wrong ways. Can you imagine? These are non-believers. They don't even believe in Allah. Yet those are the rules they set forth. That the money to build the Kaaba has to be clean. Has to be clean money. Back to the issue of thanks. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran has a beautiful way, in a few words, telling us amazing information. A lot of information. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, من بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وَلَئِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. And if you are thankful, I will give you more. Simple. Very simple. And if you are thankful, I will give you more. This is a promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a promise. This isn't just talking. Allah doesn't just fulfill words to fill the page. No. This is a promise from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you are thankful, I will give you more. Ali ibn Abi Talib, karramallahu wajhah, was traveling one day and he reached a small town. And it was time for him to pray Asr. And he was riding a horse. And so he decided to go into the masjid and pray Asr before continuing his journey. But this particular masjid was different than many of the other masajid. Back in those days, people didn't have cars. They had horses or camels. And so they had a parking lot for the horses. So they would park their horses, and each horse had a harness, and they would tie the harness to a post so the horse won't run away while they are performing the salah, and then after they're done, they go out and ride on their horse again. Well, this particular masjid did not have a post next to it, so there was no place for him to tie the horse and hold the horse. So he kind of wasn't sure what to do. He wanted to pray, but he didn't want the horse to run away. So he saw a young man come out of the masjid. And he told him, would you mind holding my horse while I pray Asr and I'm going to come back? So I'm going to go in and pray and come back. Just 5 minutes, hold the horse, I'll be right back. The man said, sure. And indeed he went into the masjid and he prayed Asr. And then when he came out, the young man was gone. He disappeared. And the horse was gone. The horse ran away. Subhanallah. So Ali ibn Abi Talib, he started running after the horse, trying to catch his horse, because if you don't have a horse, you can't continue the journey. He's not going to walk back to Al-Kufa. So he continued to run after the horse. Finally, he found the horse, and he was able to grab his horse. But when he grabbed the horse, he found that the whole harness on the horse was gone. The harness that they put on the face of the neck of the horse to guide was stolen, was gone. So he thought this young man stole the harness. Now he had a problem because you cannot ride the horse without a harness. How are you going to guide them in the right direction? So he went to the market in that little town to buy a new harness. And he saw a man selling harnesses. He said, great, this is fantastic. Now I'm going to buy one and I'll continue my journey. He looked at the merchandise and he saw his harness. He recognized it. Subhanallah. He said, where did you get this from? He said, I just bought it from a young man. Subhanallah. The young man who he trusted with his horse stole the harness and sold it to this merchant. He said, how much did you pay for it? He said, 2 dirhams. Dirham was the money at the time. It was silver, dinar was gold. But he said, I bought it for 2 dirhams. Subhanallah. Ali ibn Abi Talib, of course, he bought the harness right away so that he can put it on his horse. And he walked away and he said a beautiful word. Because, you see, his plan was that when he finished the Asr prayer, that he was going to give the young man who watched the horse for him 2 dirhams as a tip for watching the horse. He said we wanted to give it to him halal. But he insisted on getting it haram. You see, the 2 dirhams, you're going to get them. No matter what. It's how you get them. What Ali ibn Abi Talib said, and what he taught us is, I wanted to give it to him halal. But he insisted on getting it haram. You're going to get your 2 dirhams. Don't worry. But you have to decide whether you want to get it halal or whether you want to get it haram. That's a decision you have to make. Allah has decided for you, subhanahu wa ta'ala, you're going to get the 2 dirhams. You're going to get them. That decision's been made. That's your risk. But you decide how you're going to get it. And that is a critical point. Be careful. Every dime you make sure it is halal. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in a beautiful hadith that Jibreel alayhi salam came to him and instilled into him. So he taught him something. So Jibreel alayhi salam, of course, as you know, he would come with the revelation, with the Quran. But he also taught the Prophet ﷺ other things as well. And he said, Jibreel alayhi salam came and he instilled in me that every soul will receive its allotment of wealth. Every one of us will get our allotment of wealth. So be pious. Be careful how you get it. You're going to get it. Okay? Don't think you're going to be deprived of anything that Allah has allotted for you, because nobody can stop Allah from giving you. You will get it. But the question is how you get it. So the Prophet warns us. So be pious, O servants of Allah, and be kind in your requests from Allah. Be kind in your requests. Sometimes we are insistent. Why didn't I get it? Why do we want everything now? Maybe Allah decided you're going to get it 5 years from now. That's His decision, not yours. Don't be always wanting it now and wanting the whole thing now. You have a long life ahead of you. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided to divide it over time. Be careful. وَأَجْمِلُوا فِي الطَّلَبِ. And ask Allah kindly. Ask Allah nicely and respectfully, and you will get it. And you will get it. Be careful how you earn your living. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله فاستغفروه. الحمد لله ولي الصالحين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Amma ba'd, my dear brothers and sisters, I want to, in this second khutbah, say a few words about the terrorist incident that happened in New Zealand. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy upon our brothers and sisters who were killed, and to give those who have been injured a speedy recovery, and to give their families the patience that is needed during this time. This is not the first time that somebody entered a masjid and killed worshippers, Muslim worshippers. And I don't think it will be the last either, unfortunately. But I think that every time this happens, there's a lot of excitement in the media and in societies around the world. Of course, except the Muslim world. The Muslim world acts as if nothing happened, even though those who were killed were Muslims, but the Muslim governments are not concerned. They really have very little expression or concern about what happened. But really, we don't care. We as Muslims, these are our brothers and our sisters. It doesn't matter New Zealand and we are here, that's totally irrelevant. We are brothers and sisters no matter where they are throughout the world. Muslims are our brothers and sisters. We are one people, one family, one body. The Prophet ﷺ said, we are one body. If one part of us aches, the entire body will ache. That's an important issue. And if you don't ache, you're not part of the body. Be careful. If your heart doesn't bleed to what you saw, you have to question yourself. Why am I not part of that body? Because that's the way Muslims are. We are one people. One people. It doesn't matter what color we are, what language we speak, what country we are. All of that is irrelevant. How rich, how poor, all of that is irrelevant. We are one people. The people of La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. That brings us together and makes us brothers and sisters. There will always be people who hate Islam and who hate Muslims. Don't think that will go away or disappear. No, it will always has been there from day one. And it will continue to be there. But the question is, what do we do? What do we do? I really feel that in this aspect we are still deficient. We still have not done what we need to do as Muslims, particularly as Muslims who are a minority. The reality is that whether it's in New Zealand or in the United States or in Europe, Muslims are a minority. They are a smaller group compared to the majority who are non-Muslim. Well, the burden is on us. Okay, we are not the type of people who sit there and cry about ourselves and feel victims all the time. We are always thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we must ask the question, what do we do next? How do we may not be able to prevent this from happening again 100%, but how can we lessen the chance? How can we improve and try to erase hate from around us? There will be people who hate us. That's not going to go away. But I think it is our responsibility and our duty to reach out to the non-Muslims in our communities. A serious reach out. To tell them who we are and what we believe in. Our faith is beautiful. Our faith is rich. Our faith is what advanced civilization for thousands of years. This is not something, don't yourself be fooled by what you see on television, that we're all terrorists and we hate everyone. That's not true. We know that in our hearts of hearts. We know that from the Quran. It's not true. But the burden is on us to communicate the truth. And we have failed in doing so, in my opinion. There are people who are trying, but we each need to try. Each one of you here represents Islam, whether you like it or not. That is the truth. How you act, what you say, how you interact with other people, you represent Islam. So do it well. The burden is on you. Do it well. And collectively as a group, we need to reach out. We can't sit anymore just in our own masajid, worrying about ourselves, fighting with each other, which is still very common. No. Those days are over. They should be over. They should have been over a long time ago. We should be united as one people. And we should interact with the non-Muslims around us to tell them who we are, to teach them who we are. We don't have to always talk about terrorism. Our faith is beautiful. Look at what I just talked to you about today. These lessons apply to everybody, not just to Muslims. To be thankful, to be grateful, to give sadaqah. This applies to Muslims and non-Muslims. This applies to everybody. To earn your money by clean means, halal, that applies to everyone. We have gems in our faith that we can share and teach with others around us. But we don't. Many times we don't even know them ourselves. But if we don't, we should learn them. And once we learn them, we should teach them. That's our responsibility. Muslims are not only concerned about themselves, they're concerned about humanity in its entirety. The burden is on us to improve all of humanity, no one else. Don't say they or them. There is no they or them. We are it. And if we don't step up to the plate, this kind of thing will not only keep happening, but it will increase. And eventually people will become numb to it. I admire the New Zealand society and the government because they were not numb to this. They were shocked by it. And they actually responded with kindness and love towards the Muslim community. Alhamdulillah. This is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I will tell you, if this keeps happening over and over again, people are going to become numb. They're not going to think much about it. I mean, look at Syria, for example. People have become numb. The first year, when people were killing each other, it was a big tragedy. Now, people don't even listen to it. It's not even on the news anymore. Unless some tragic big thing happens. But every day people are getting killed. But you don't hear about it. Because we have become numb. And we cannot let that happen to our brothers and sisters around the world. And even our own communities. So I encourage this masjid and others here in Lancaster to reach out. Reach out to those around us. The non-Muslims. The reach out should be continuous and ongoing. Not just in the time of tragedy. Not just in the time when there's something on the news. It should be ongoing. It should never stop. Now that requires a lot of effort and a lot of organization. And you need people who know how to do that. Because there are some people who don't know how to interact necessarily with people of other faiths. But alhamdulillah, we have a wonderful community here. And there are good people who can make this happen. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت فإنك تقضي بالحق ولا يقضى عليك وإنه لا يذل من واليت ولا يعز من عاديت تبارك ربنا وتعالى لك الحمد على ما قضيت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك اللهم اهدنا لصالح الأعمال لا يهدي لصالحها إلا أنت اللهم اهدنا لأحسن الأخلاق لا يهدي لأحسنها إلا أنت اللهم أصلح لنا ديننا الذي هو عصمة أمرنا وأصلح لنا دنيانا التي فيها معاشنا وأصلح لنا آخرتنا التي إليها مردنا اللهم اكفنا بحلالك عن حرامك وبطاعتك عن معصيتك وبفضلك عمن سواك اللهم بفضلك ورحمتك أعل كلمتي الحق والدين اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين بفضلك ورحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين إنك يا ربنا على ما تشاء قدير وبالإجابة جدير اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وآخر الصلاة